Watson Motors, Lakeshore Automotive and Tire, McGee Insurance, and West Michigan CMH on 102.7 Mom FM.
It is WMOM 831 now, and we do this every other week, or we have a skip week because we didn't have a meeting in that 2-week period of time. But they are back in the studio with us. Mayor Barnett, from the city of Ludington. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Thanks for coming in this morning. And Mitch Foster is here as well, city manager of Ludington. Both of you had a pretty good time, I would assume, at the Sesquicentennial Love Ludington weekend. The shut down the streets. People were constantly saying, Mitch, and you know that, hey, we should bring this back on a weekly basis, or but realistically, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, the amount of work put in by Mayor Barnett, Jackie Steckel, Brandy Miller, Heather Tykowski, Kristen Smith, the staff of the chamber, the staff of the city, the public works department, the police department, other law enforcement and fire agencies. It's a lot. They did a phenomenal job to put all this together, to get the sponsors, to do all of those things, all the vendors that showed up, all the volunteers, the Rotary Interact Club that handed out all the ice cream with House of Flavors. It is so big. We probably won't be bringing it back on a weekly or monthly basis.
No.
But maybe a once-a-year thing might be kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, I think so. And there's actually some conversations about that. Maybe it's an annual side of things, and that's more realistic. I mean, that you can plan something like that out, which is a good thing. Mayor Barnett, I think you and I were talking about this as you came up and said, "How many people do you think are here?" and I thought, or you were like 5,000 or 6,000, right?
Right. Yeah. Yep, I definitely think there was a crowd of people. Boy, I tell you, it was great.
It was really cool, yeah, and a lot of great feedback. Usually you can gauge how things go through social media comments and so on and so forth. And other than a couple of fireworks when it's been a kind of a drought thing, but you had most of the fire department there and the trucks as well. So there was that was kind of covered in that sense, right, Mitch?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We had several conversations in the week leading up to it with Chief Henderson, just making sure everybody was comfortable, all the precautions were taken care of. So there was no concern from our end, especially as the wind died down leading into the evening. It's really interesting, though. I think one of the items that I'm really looking forward to hearing, this wasn't just a celebration for the city, it was a celebration for the community, and I'm hopeful that we can have a conversation with our restaurateurs, our business owners, and say, hey, can you compare this weekend to last year at the same time, or next weekend when Macker's in town, and let's see where kind of revenues come in, because every store you went into or person you talked to, the place was busy. Optimist Club ran out of hot dogs and brats.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
Cluck Bucket as well.
They ran out of chicken.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. But somebody came up to me and actually said this during the event. They were like, and I don't know who it was, but they said, when they had Friday Night Live, right, before, that there was actually feedback from the businesses that said they didn't get much business during that time. Did you hear that too or not?
Yeah, that was a case that we'd heard several times. I know the DDA heard that, the Chamber did as well. And so I think, when you do events that are more kind of singular, one-off, once a year, you turn it into a big thing. I mean, this is obviously the Sesquicentennial celebration. It's a full year of that. But this was a one-time this year street party that changes people's dynamic, and they prepare for it and plan for it. So I think that's why it kind of is looked at differently.
Yeah, and it's a very successful event. Leading up to it, Mayor Barnett, we talked in the morning about the new Andy's restaurant that's coming in at the corner of Rath and Ludington Avenue. That should be built out by the end of next year, opening end of 2024, 2025. You can feel some of the holes in this particular case being filled in the downtown area, and you have tourists coming into town, and you want them to experience Ludington at its finest, and hopefully that's happening, right?
Yeah, I think people are excited. I just talking over the weekend to folks. Just a lot of excitement. not only about development, but about just the wonderful time to get out and mingle with the community. Whether you live here, whether you're visiting here, it's just a lot of feedback. And I think development is a great deal, because that certainly goes well throughout the year, and it's not just a isolated situation for summer only or whatever. But it's exciting to see the renderings down there. If you haven't had a chance to go down there and take a look and see what that building's going to look like, I highly encourage you to do that, because it's going to be a real special place to look, for the downtown area.
Looking forward to it. All right, let's get into some meat and potatoes in regards to the council meeting tonight, 6 p.m. Right?
Mm-hmm.
6 p.m.
Yep.
Okay. And what do you have as one of your topics that we should be discussing today? Looking forward to tonight, Mitch.
I think from my end, we've got the Oprah application from 215 South James Street. So Caleb Vischer at Vischer Construction. It's the old Love Wine building. I'm trying to think back. Moose Lodge, maybe, I think was that location. Trying to think for people's reference. So he has received a $500,000 grant from the state of Michigan. He is then going to apply, or has applied, for an Oprah to help kind of hold his taxes steady while he does about $1 million worth of work to that building. So that'll be a really nice thing. It's being added on. It's on tonight's agenda for the creation of the district. And if that's approved tonight by City Council, then City Council will set a meeting for our next council meeting for the approval of the Oprah itself. So it's a really important redevelopment tool that we have at the city, and Caleb's taking advantage of it for his project.
Does when businesses do utilize that, do you feel, or is there any concern that it takes away from that overall budget, and because you're kind of giving it's tax benefits, right? Tax incentives.
Yeah, it's tax benefits for sure, but the advantage with an Oprah over a true tax abatement is it just holds what they're currently paying steady. Okay. So they don't pay any less, they don't pay any more, at least to the city. And so that's helpful, because we know what we've been getting from them, and so we can plan for that. It does hold off those new revenues for a period of time, up to 12 years. But I think the trade-off for the city is, you got $1 million investment into a facility, you've got potentially new business or new jobs being created. Versus the little bit of tax increase we'd have year to year if it was just left as is. So,
is there ever a cap on that? Based on the city size or anything like that? Is there, or is it anybody and everybody that can apply for that?
Theoretically, it's anybody and everybody.
Okay.
This as long as they meet the qualifications for an Oprah, or in industrial purposes, it's an IFT. There's a Commercial Redevelopment Act. There's 3 or 4 of them that kind of fit within the same category. But the city does have kind of policies and guidelines that we use to dictate how much, who can get it, for how long, those sorts of things.
Other development in the Ludington area, we haven't really chatted about that too much recently, but is there anything on the horizon, or and again, we're not looking for breaking news or secrets or anything like that, but just to present that to the community that, hey, we're going to see some development here, or at least there's some conversation happening.
I think if you look to the PM Lake kind of frontage, I think that's where you're going to start seeing a lot of change. Okay. You have the 97-unit apartment complex that's going to hopefully kind of break ground here July or August, right at the end of James Street next to the aggregate dock. You have Thompson Cabinet, which has an agreed-upon asking price to be sold, and then our building next door to that. So I think you've got some pretty lengthy stretches of that PM Lake frontage that will see some change. But also just South James Street, you've got the new building there at the intersection of Filer and Loomis on the southeast corner that's having quite a bit of work done. I've heard they're looking at a July opening. So yeah, little things like that are important. And frankly, Timbers being back open. I don't know if there's a name yet. I like Timbers South, but I'll leave it at that. Yeah. They've got what looks to be a new menu. I'm excited to try to get there this week before they get too busy. But yeah, a lot of good things happening.
All right, looking forward to that. Mayor, any sort of thoughts on the Timbers name? I want to throw anything?
Oh, I'm a bad marketing guy. I'll come up with something 50 years old, so that wouldn't be helpful.
No, it's all right. Just 2 blocks away from each other. Anyway, but it is good to see that development. This is, Mr. Mayor, something that's with the drought. Now that we've had some rain, at least, has been a good thing. But we've seen other communities have like no mow May and stuff like that. Have we ever thought about that? Is that even something that would come up on the plate at all, or even be discussed? Obviously, we want to make sure that our lawns are pretty manicured there, but what about the conditions when we have weather like we did?
Well, I mean, that topic, frankly, has come up, and we've discussed it. The committee's discussed it, and just haven't moved forward. Perhaps in future years, that's something that we can do. But I just think, man, what a weird year. I mean, the other day when it was raining out, I looked out and my sprinklers were on, and I thought, I got to turn it. Oh, wait a minute, I'll just leave it. Because it's important. Crops, the farmers having issues with rainfall and that kind of thing. So that's pretty important.
And we've got the Petunia Parade there going up. At least I saw them twice in one day. We saw the morning and then the afternoon. Yeah. Could that be something regular that we'll see at least in the beginning here to get a little bit more water to those roots?
Yeah, I think that that organization is really doing as much as they possibly can to battle Mother Nature and just really keep those things good. Because they, let's face it. I mean, that as you drive down Ludington in the summer, that's kind of one of those things that makes you go, I'm here. Those petunias and just the beauty down there. So yeah, it's pretty important. And people along the way weeding and doing different things along with the Petunia Committee. That's pretty important. That's part of Ludington.
Absolutely. But there is the other part of that concern is there are stretches that, kind of died out of the petunias. And so, Mitch, is there anything that and not to put pressure on the Petunia Parade, because there's a ton of volunteers that are stepping up, right?
Yep.
But when you see these stretches, it's also the overall city look. So what is that conversation like, if there is any?
Yeah, so they were actually able to get another $500 worth of petunias here recently. Timing on planting them is really when rain is here solidly. Obviously, Luke Bryan said it best, rain is a good thing.
Yeah.
And right now we don't have much of it. Even this weekend, that rain wasn't strong enough to really soak everything in. And so I think what the Petunia Parade folks and their volunteers are looking at is continuing to do twice a day, waterings. They've got a good group of volunteers to get out there on a regular basis to do that. And then once we have a good showing of rain moving forward, which I think looks like sometime early next week, we'll have kind of a good few days in a row. I'm guessing they'll look to do some replacements at that point in time. But the city is always willing to help. At this point in time, the Petunia Parade wants to stand on their own and do this and make it work. And they obviously are working with property owners to see about help in that way. But as you said, Chris, we've got stretches of Ludington Avenue that don't have a ton of tree cover or have sprinklers on the properties adjacent to them. And so those areas are definitely going to need some big assistance.
And Mr. Mayor, obviously you both have been around for a long time here, but Mayor Barnett, you've seen these kind of waves come through in the past where it's struggled a little bit, but the Petunia Parade Committee continues. Is this extreme, or is it this is recoverable? We're going to get past it. Petunia Parade's going to continue year after year after year in the future.
I just, as Mitch said, I just think this group is they've got a mission, and they're going to make sure that they do all they can do to make sure that the petunias are healthy and they make it through the season. They're just not going to sit back and watch it. So appreciate it. I know the city again is able to kind of help out and that kind of thing in some ways, but Petunia Committee is that's their turf, and I think that's admirable.
Absolutely, and that's a good point that you brought up, because there is still those conversations or confusion, as it would be out there, that people believe that the Petunia effort is a city effort, but it's a completely separate organization that does that.
Yeah, this community is so. Organizations are so intrinsically enmeshed into our community that sometimes people don't see this or that, and they assume the city does everything. And there are so many people that are involved in so many efforts and really do a yeoman's work in terms of getting things done around this community and making it tick. So we just appreciate every organization, in particular in this case, the Petunia Committee.
We're talking with Mayor Barnett from the city of Ludington and Mitch Foster, City Manager of Ludington, this morning here on Mom FM. You can watch this on our Facebook page as well as our YouTube channel, and listen to it over your radio, your smart devices. Mitch, the hotter topic is parking and paid parking, and let's just push parking off for
Yep.
a second.
Yep.
Although when we were covering the Andy's development at the corner, that came up in conversation. Like, what about parking and stuff? It feels like it is going to be eventually an issue. I mean, it's kind of an issue now, but we can leave that for another day.
Yep.
And see if there's some development there. But the question that people probably have is there going to be paid parking at Stearns Beach? Where do we stand on that?
Yeah, so City Council had a committee of the whole meeting last week or 2 weeks ago now, and they discussed and heard from myself and other staff members regarding kind of the options and what it would look like, outcomes, those sorts of things, enforcement. And now City Council tonight is going to have it on the agenda just for a discussion. No action, nothing along those lines. But really, from my perspective, I need to know where the items they need to have better understanding of are, so that I can prepare that for them and have that ready for the next meeting. Because I would guess either the second meeting in June or this first meeting in July, they'll have some sort of a vote as to Mitch move forward to do an RFP or to do additional research on this area because we think we're leaning towards it, or nope, let's not do it. Hey, stop doing all the work. And I think that's where we're going to be at that point in time.
Where's the community stand in regards to this? You get emails and phone calls and conversations and so on and so forth, but where do they stand?
I think there's a large contingent of the population that does not like the idea. Whether they are all City of Ludington residents or they're county residents, I'm not sure. At the committee of the whole meeting, most of the residents that were there spoke against paid parking. However, they were all from the area directly around the beach, which they are going to be the most directly affected, just the potential of overflow parking into their neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the folks that lived farther away kind of were more ambivalent to it and just wanted to make sure that a proper process was followed. And so I think it's going to be very interesting. Each of the city councilors, we're going to go chat with some of their constituents and neighbors to see where they thought. But, it may end up just being, all right, we're good for now, or, hey, let's move forward with this. I serve at the will of council, so we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. Mr. Mayor, the pros and cons. What's the positives and negatives to all of this in the end?
Well, the negatives, a couple of them that come to my mind are just the idea of charging folks to come and look at our beautiful, the beautiful lake and the aesthetics and all of that stuff, and now charging for that. Certainly understand that. Certainly do. Certainly understand the issues with regards to the neighbors and their fear of that type of change. The pros, to be honest with you, are there's going to be, in my belief, there's going to be, if council approves this, and that's not a foregone conclusion, but if they do, that leaves at some point in the future, that leaves some abilities to start fixing the local streets for which funding is an issue. And so, again, those are two issues that people feel very strongly about. You have a number of folks, talking about their street needs to be fixed, and so we need the ability to do that, and funding increases and stuff like that. There are other ways to do that, but that's painful on the people that live in 3.2 square miles, and so the idea of paid parking helps share that cost and share that responsibility.
Is there projections of how much this will bring in annually at all?
Mitch, I think the projection, what was it, 300?
Yeah, we were somewhere between 225,000 and 300,000. But that's a conservative estimate. If I remember back to when Muskegon was looking at it, they estimated about $500,000, and now they're clearing $1 million a year.
Okay, and the negative impact that first comes to mind is will it discourage tourists from spending more time here, right?
Yeah, I mean that's a conversation that we have had and are ongoing having with the Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Chamber to make sure that they would be comfortable with this idea if it were to come to fruition. I think at this point in time they look at it and say $5 or $10. That shouldn't deter somebody. However, that may deter somebody from parking on the beach. And so, again, that goes to that neighborhood issue of do we institute some sort of a neighborhood parking permits, those sorts of things that just signify that they live here versus somebody who's just parking there to use the beach. There are definitely externalities and concerns that pop up anytime you talk about a big policy change like this. But again, if council decides to move forward with it, we move forward with it. If not, we move on to the next item.
All right. Speaking of moving on to the next item, let's talk about it. What's on your agenda still tonight that you're looking forward to?
Well, one thing I wanted to bring up real quick. It happened last week that we weren't on the radio, but you talked and the mayor talked about this community rallying around an item. Can we talk about what Mancino's and Jeff Rodenbeck did last week?
Oh, absolutely.
As well as Styx. Essentially donating all of the revenues that you bring in a single day to your general manager who had a brain aneurysm is incredible. And that is, I think that, going back to the mayor's point, that is what this community does. Whether it is singular issues revolving around an individual person, the Will Strong events that happened because of Will Flewelling, this event that occurred at Mancino's, or the Petunia Parade that has hundreds of volunteers, at least 7 gentlemen that wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning to go water flowers. These are the incredible things that this community does. And so I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to Jeff Rodenbeck and those folks for doing that for their employee, because that's what it means to be a good employer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good message there. And for them to, they sold out by 6 p.m. They couldn't take any more orders for an event that was going to expire at 9 o'clock that night. So
exactly,
very good there. Mr. Mayor, you were, and good point that you brought up. We also see that our public services our first responders continue training. We had a chance, and I saw you had stopped by the middle school there while the Ludington Fire Department was up on the roof doing some training. They had invited us out to cover that for a few minutes, and it's kind of neat to be able to see that our first responders are continuing their training efforts, especially when it comes to fire and rescue.
Well, I would say this, first of all, there was a guy that was up at the very top of the Ludington Fire Department aerial that looked vaguely familiar. Chris, do you have any input on any of that stuff? Or
Oh.
The guy looked pretty steady up there.
Oh, the guy in the yellow helmet?
Perhaps,
Yeah, me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first time I've ever obviously climbed a fire ladder at Clary. And I had a completely different perception of what it would be like. I was like, there should be a solid panel underneath that, but there's not. It's just pipes and it's safety. I mean, it's very safe. But I'm not a good height person. Let's just say that.
So there's no thoughts of a career change or anything like that on your part?
No, not at all.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. I sure appreciate all the work and all the effort that the fire department, not only in Ludington but in our surrounding departments in the area, do. Those guys and gals do a great job in terms of training and equipment maintenance and all the different things. And in this case, training. They were out there. They're all set up, and they're doing a ropes course off the pool area. And I at first it kind of looked like they were picking up wedged tennis balls, but nope. They were up there and doing some ropes training, and I'm glad they do it, because like you, I don't think too much of heights.
No, not at all. No, I agree. Let's cover a couple more topics before we wrap up this morning. Mr. Mayor, do you have some things on the agenda that you're looking forward to that we haven't had a chance to talk about tonight?
Well, I'm just looking forward to. I'll just say this: there's a couple individuals in particular that have served the Ludington area in a number of capacities well, and we're going to take a few minutes to acknowledge and thank them for their service. That'll be towards the end of the meeting, and just thank people for coming down and taking part in this weekend's events. I mean, there was just, if you couldn't find something to do in Ludington, you were locked in your house with the air conditioning on or whatever. But at any rate, it was a great weekend, and we look forward to Macker. We look forward to Macker Saturday and Sunday. I know the opening ceremony is 8 o'clock. I'm told that they've retained a squad to kind of do some basketball type stuff. I don't know how proficient they'll be, but anyway, it'll be.
I've heard it will be quite the show.
All right, that's good. No, that's a plus. Well, and the other thing that they had the camera on you while he was talking, so I apologize about that to our viewers. But the amount of teams up this year than last year, I think with 560 plus teams this year, which is good. It is still the thought process that this could be the last year, at least under the city's management, the chamber and DDA. But does 1 year of a little bit of an uptick kind of keep the ball rolling a little bit? Don't mind the pun.
I don't think so at this point. I think Macker released a statement over the weekend that said this is going to be it.
Okay.
They recognize that at that many teams, it's not enough to really make a profit for them, and not too little to where the expenses come down. And so I think for everybody, come out, enjoy Macker this upcoming weekend. Recognize it's the last one, and enjoy the weekend.
Because in the past there was upwards of like 1,500 teams in the past, right?
Correct. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, do you mind either one of you taking the question of other than COVID? I mean, COVID certainly impacted a lot, but from 1,500 teams to 560. That's not just from COVID, is it, or not?
No, it's a combination of things. My understanding is, this weekend in particular, this early part of this year, is the AAU, AYBT kind of youth basketball season. You also have coaches in other sports that have told their kids that they cannot participate in stuff like this anymore. You have specialization in sports. Back when it was 1,600 teams, you still had kids doing 3 sports in all schools. Now, if you're in a school large enough, you play one sport and that is it. I think you've got people that recognize, frankly, as I am one to identify with, once you hit 30, playing a 3-on-3 basketball tournament isn't necessarily the smartest thing.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a number of factors that probably contributed to that. And it's just a reality that we deal with now.
Good
But
point.
I would say this too, and I agree with what Mitch has said. One of the things that's important is just to be thankful for the 30 plus years that they've been here in Ludington. I say 30 plus, including COVID years, but just the opportunity for people to come and enjoy the sport, for players to enjoy the sport, for people to kind of come together and work in a volunteer position to raise funds for their particular organizations. This has been a great event, and we have surely appreciated it. But like all things humans involved in, we go through seasons, and so this is one of those times.
Understandable, and it is a good event when you're looking at it. But there's always concerns. Locals have concerns about parking. The same idea around that area, and but hopefully the businesses can take that effort and convert it into still a good profitable weekend.
Exactly.
next year or whatever comes along. Let's wrap up with any other topic that we should be talking about that maybe we haven't this morning. Mitch, anything?
Yeah, I've got 2 quick items. The Planning Commission has pushed out 2 zoning ordinance amendments. One is on camping. It's to look down at the bayou area between Madison and Washington to allow the expansion of a campground that's down there. So that'll be before City Council tonight. And then the other item is actually a completely updated sign ordinance. That is a massive monster of an ordinance.
Yeah.
They take a lot of time. I've done those a couple of times. They're not fun. Nobody likes them in the end because someone's always going to miss out on having 52 signs at their building. But the Planning Commission took a lot of time to get through that. That'll come to City Council tonight for a first reading as well.
All right, and I've just heard a little bit. I haven't read it yet, but it's based on percentage of window space, right?
Percentage of frontage.
Frontage. Okay,
yep, not even just the windows.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. So in that, if it moves through, which it probably will, realistically, what happens, or what time frame is that for some of the businesses in the downtown area?
So it would take effect 20 days after approval. But all the existing buildings would then become non-conforming if they had too many signs, which means they could keep them up as long as they were within reason, and didn't have to pull them down. So the Planning Commission rewrote the ordinance in a way that allows for these non-conforming signs to stay and be fixed and do those sorts of things, because that was one of the biggest concerns.
And did something ultimately trigger that? I mean, we don't want to call out any business. Okay?
No.
But
it's not a business. It was there was a Supreme Court case. It was Reed versus the town of Gilbert, Arizona. That was a content-based sign Supreme Court decision that you can't judge a sign based on the content. It's just the sign itself or type of sign and those sorts of things. That started about 2.5 years ago. That's how long these things take, because it got to City Council at one point in time. There were concerns that hadn't been raised in Planning Commission, so it went back to Planning Commission. So it's had a few iterations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
All right, we'll keep track of that and probably bring it up here in the near future. Mr. Mayor, anything for our final wrap for today's segment that you have?
I think we're good.
Okay.
I just invite anybody that has any concerns regarding any of these topics we talked about to come on over to City Hall at 6 o'clock tonight.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks to both of you for coming in, Mayor Barnett and Mitch Foster. We appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It is 9:01 here on 102.7 Bomb FM, 9 o'clock hour. We've got news and weather coming your way in seconds. On your station playing your hit music, it is WMOM.
Thanks for making us number one. I'm proud to be awarded the Small Business of the Year by the Ludington and Scott